Real people don't talk to dogs, you crazy old man. Henry sat motionless on the park bench, whispering something to the aging dog resting its head on his lap. A group of young men erupted in laughter. One recorded a video. This lonely veteran is having a full conversation with his dog. They had no idea. 3 hours later, a black SUV pulled up silently. 5 Marines stepped out and without hesitation approached the old man and unsaluted him in perfect unison. Type 1 if you believe loyalty exists beyond just human relationships. Welcome to QH. Let's uncover what really happened. Henry Dawson, 71, was a former Marine who had served 3 tours in Fallujah. These days he lived alone in a small apartment with his elderly dog Ranger. Ranger wasn't just any dog. He had been a military working dog trained to detect explosives. During a critical mission in 2005, Ranger had saved 4 Marines by identifying a hidden IED network that would have decimated their patrol. After the war, regulations stated that military dogs should remain in service or be adopted by handlers with proper facilities. But Henry had pulled strings, called in favors and filed countless forms to ensure Ranger came home with him. "We came in together," he told his commanding officer. "We leave together." Now Ranger was old, his muzzle gray, eyes clouded with cataracts, hearing diminished. But Henry never considered abandoning him. Their bond had been forged in fire and blood, stronger than time or convenience. Every morning, Henry would take Ranger to the local park. They sat on the same bench, Henry reading his book while talking softly to Ranger, as if the dog understood every word. He would describe the weather, reminisce about their deployments, or simply provide reassurance when Ranger seemed anxious. "Remember that sandstorm outside Ramadi?" Henry would whisper. "Couldn't see 3 feet ahead. But you never lost the trail, never lost your nerve." On this particular Tuesday, a group of young men noticed Henry's one-sided conversation with his dog. They snickered, then pulled out phones to record. "Check this out," one called to his friends. "Old man thinks his dog talks back." They captured several minutes of Henry leaning down, speaking quietly to Ranger, occasionally pausing as if waiting for a response. Within an hour, the video was online with the caption, "Crazy old vet. Best friend is a dog who can't even understand him." The park manager, concerned about the commotion, approached Henry that afternoon. "Mr. Dawson, we've had some complaints about you talking to yourself. It's making other visitors uncomfortable." "I'm talking to my dog," Henry replied calmly. "Yes, well," the manager continued awkwardly. "Perhaps you could do that at home. Some parents are concerned about their children seeing unusual behavior." Henry nodded without argument. He'd faced worse than disapproving stares. As he slowly gathered his things, Ranger struggled to his feet, arthritis making each movement painful. But the dog determined to follow his human. "It's all right, boy," Henry murmured, gently stroking Ranger's graying head. "They can laugh if they want. You're the only one who never left me behind when the shells were falling." Ranger pressed his muzzle against Henry's hand, a gesture unchanged by the years. Together, they walked slowly toward the exit, the laughter of the young men fading behind them. "If you believe a good person deserves to be remembered, stay here with us." 2 weeks after the park incident, Henry received an eviction notice from the veterans' subsidized housing complex. The letter cited unauthorized pet maintenance and failure to provide documentation of service animal status. Henry had submitted the paperwork 3 times, but bureaucracy moved slowly and Ranger's military records were classified under operations he'd participated in. Each appeal disappeared into administrative limbo with no family to turn to and a modest pension that barely covered necessities. Henry sold his few valuables and purchased an old RV. He parked it near the lake where he and Ranger had once trained before deployment, a place that felt more like home than any apartment. Every day they walked the perimeter of the lake, Henry matching his pace to Ranger's increasingly labored steps. The dog's health was declining, but his loyalty never wavered. One cold morning, Ranger collapsed, his body convulsing in seizure. Henry gathered the dog in his arms and rushed to the nearest veterinary clinic, panic rising in his throat. "Please," he begged the receptionist, "he needs help immediately. I don't have much money, but I can work it off, anything." The young woman barely looked up from her computer. "We don't provide charity services. There's an animal shelter across town that offers lower-cost euthanasia if that's what you're looking for." "Euthanasia?" Henry's voice cracked. "I don't want to put him down, I want to save him. Sir, treatment requires payment up front. It's policy." Henry sat in the waiting area, cradling Ranger's trembling body. He didn't cry, he'd learned long ago to internalize pain. But his weathered hands stroked the dog's fur with gentle rhythmic movement. A teenager hanging around the clinic recognized Henry from the viral video, which had now accumulated thousands of mocking comments. The boy surreptitiously recorded another clip. Dog whisperer, still having heart-to-hearts with his four-legged therapist. By evening, new memes circulated online. When your only friend has 4 legs, and crazy vet thinks Fido understands war stories. Henry ignored it all. He carried Ranger back to their RV, wrapping the dog in his own jacket and staying awake through the night to monitor his breathing. He crushed his pain medication into Ranger's water, prioritizing the dog's comfort over his own arthritic pain. "Hold on, buddy," he whispered. "We've survived worse. Remember those nights outside Fallujah? You kept me warm then. My turn now." What none of the mockers noticed was the tag still hanging from Ranger's worn collar. It wasn't a regular dog tag, but a military identification. K9 USMC 4521. "Steady, Corporal. Easy now." In Henry's eyes, Ranger wasn't just a pet. He was a fellow Marine who had never been formally discharged from duty. The following day, Henry used the last of his pension to buy antibiotics from a sympathetic feed store clerk. It wasn't proper veterinary care, but it was all he could manage. As Ranger's condition worsened, Henry sat beside him, reading aloud from dog-eared paperbacks, the same way he'd kept them both calm during thunderstorms that sounded too much like artillery. A passing jogger noticed the old man sitting outside his RV, talking earnestly to what appeared to be a very sick dog. Rather than offer help, she quickened her pace and muttered something about that weird homeless vet. Henry heard but didn't react. He'd long since stopped expecting civilians to understand. The only opinion that mattered to him lay panting at his side, fighting for each breath. "What do you think about how people treated a man who once protected our country? Type unfair if it breaks your heart too." 3 hours after the second video went viral, an unmarked black SUV, with government plates, pulled up near Henry's RV. The vehicle came to a precise stop, its engine falling silent with military efficiency. 5 Marines in dress blues emerged, moving with the synchronized precision that comes from years of discipline. Their faces were solemn, purpose evident in every step as they approached Henry's humble dwelling. The oldest of the group, a master sergeant with rows of combat ribbons, knocked firmly on the RV door. "Mr. Henry Dawson?" Henry opened the door, one arm still cradling Ranger, who had grown too weak to stand. Confusion crossed his face at the sight of the uniformed men. "Sir," the master sergeant said, rendering a perfect salute. "I'm Master Sergeant Blake. The men with me are Lieutenant Morgan, Corporal Haynes, Lance Corporal Dean and Private First Class Cole." Henry returned the salute instinctively, muscle memory from decades ago. "Sir," continued Lieutenant Morgan, stepping forward, "Ranger pulled me out of a compound in Ramadi when my team was pinned down. And you never abandoned him when regulations would have separated you. Now it's our turn to ensure neither of you is left behind." All 5 Marines saluted again, this time directing their gesture as much to Ranger as to Henry. "We're here to transport you both to the Naval Veterinary Hospital at Bethesda. Ranger has been reactivated to honorary service status under the Battle Buddies Forever program. Full medical care has been authorized." Henry's weathered face betrayed no emotion, but his eyes glistened. "Ranger can hardly stand. He may not." "Sir," interrupted Corporal Haynes gently, "we're prepared for that. We've brought a specialized transport." From the SUV, they retrieved a stretcher designed for canine patients. With practice care, they helped Henry transfer Ranger onto it, securing the elderly dog with straps that were firm yet gentle. "The people who recorded those videos," Henry began hesitantly, "are being addressed so," Master Sergeant Blake stated flatly. "The commandant himself saw the footage this morning. He had some choice words about respecting those who've served, including our 4-legged Marines." News outlets arrived as the procession moved toward the vehicle, but Reynolds blocked their camera. "This isn't a photo op. This is about doing right by our own." One persistent reporter managed to capture the story, but honored the Marines' request to keep cameras at a distance. Her article, published the next day, carried the headline, "Dogs Can't Speak." But 5 Marines stood up for one silent call. At the veterinary hospital, Ranger received round-the-clock care from specialists in canine geriatric medicine. The young man who had posted the mocking videos issued a public apology after his commanding officer, he was an ROTC cadet, made the connection. "I didn't understand," he admitted on camera, voice shaking. "I thought it was just an old man talking to a pet. I didn't know Ranger was a decorated war dog. I didn't know about their history." Meanwhile, a group of veterans from 3 neighboring states pooled resources and connection. Within days, they'd secured a small house for Henry, mortgage-free through a veterans program, located near a lake with easy walking paths, suitable for rangers' condition. The Homeowners Association rules that typically restricted pets had been overridden by a unanimous vote. After hearing their story, 2 weeks later, as Ranger's health stabilized enough for release, the hospital organized a formal ceremony. The dog, once dismissed as merely an old man's companion, was officially recognized with the Canine Service Medal that had been authorized years ago, but never presented. Henry stood tall as he accepted the honor on Ranger's behalf, the dog sitting at attention despite his age and health challenges. A military photographer captured the moment. Ranger, seemingly understanding the solemnity of the occasion, raised his paw in what looked remarkably like a salute. As they prepared to leave for their new home, the original 5 Marines reappeared, now joined by dozens more, veterans from multiple conflicts spanning decades. They formed 2 perfect lines, creating a path of honor from the hospital doors to the waiting transport. As Henry walked between them, Ranger slowly following with renewed strength, every Marine present raised their hand in salute, not just to the man, but to the dog who had earned his place among them through courage and sacrifice. Semper Fidelis, Master Sergeant Blake said quietly as they passed. Always faithful, both of you. Have you ever made the right choice when everyone else walked away? Your story matters too. Each morning after that, Henry would sit on the porch of his new home, reading aloud to Ranger just as he always had. But now passersby no longer laughed or hurried away. Instead, they nodded respectfully, some even pausing to offer a quiet greeting. The neighborhood children, once warned to avoid that strange man, now asked permission to visit. Henry welcomed them, gently showing them how to approach Ranger without startling him. Is your dog a superhero? One small boy asked wide-eyed. Henry smiled, a genuine expression rarely seen before. No, son, he's just a Marine, like me. The local elementary school invited Henry and Ranger for Veterans Day. Henry declined public speaking, but agreed to attend. He sat quietly at the back while Ranger, wearing his service vest, accepted gentle pats from children who now understood that heroes come in many forms. A small bronze plaque appeared at the park where Henry had once been installed without ceremony, but prominently placed, dedicated to the service of military working dogs and their handlers. Loyalty beyond words. The final video to circulate online showed a very different scene from it captured Henry and Ranger, sitting by the lake at sunset, silhouetted against the fading light. A group of active duty Marines had come to visit, and one caught the moment when, without prompting, they all fell silent, as Ranger raised his muzzle to the setting sun and howled, a sound both mournful and proud. The veterans present understood. It was the sound of remembrance. Henry's hand rested on Ranger's back, steady and sure. Neither needed words anymore. Not all battles are fought with rifles, and not all victories are celebrated with cheers. Some are quiet, one in loyalty, endurance, and the simple act of staying beside someone who needs you. Henry had been a Marine, yes, but more importantly, he'd never forgotten what it meant to be human in the moments others looked away. There are stories that don't need applause, only the quiet acknowledgement that sacrifice was made, that service was rendered, and sometimes an old dog and an aging man in quiet companionship remind an entire generation of what it means to hold fast to honor when the battles are long past. Have you ever witnessed loyalty being undervalued? Share your story, it deserves to be treasured too. Subscribe to Incredible Stories, where we preserve important memories so future generations will never forget.